those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen. Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Welcome to episode 81 of the Wild Eye Podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to Pinnacle Entertainment's Savage Worlds, aimed at beginners and veterans alike. What's going on, Princess? My favorite little sweet man over there. Yeah, I'm not looking at the new guy. I'm looking at you, Eric. Don't look so shocked.
I'm back. I missed you guys last episode. I see you did your little girls party with Savage Riffs there.
Best episode ever. Best episode of the Wild Eye Podcast in 80 episodes, I think. Wait a second, it was episode 80.
Yeah, and your pajamas and pillow fights and all that. That was cute.
We partied like rock stars, man. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was good. I'm a bit upset I missed that one, not because of the topic, but because of Sean. Sounds like a great guy. So I told him we're going to have him back, and this time I'll be there.
Maybe we'll have him back and we could talk about a different setting other than riffs. Did you hear that your mom called into the show? Well,
I told her not to do that.
She's lovely. She's very lovely.
Yeah, nice old lady.
She gave me a sweet poutine recipe.
That's bad. So yeah, we have a guest today, and no Paris. Paris was busy this weekend. He's got a big presentation for his program on Monday, so couldn't do it. And I understand that it's not like it was a lame reason, like why Harrison is not on the show for the summer.
Paris is kind of a guest too, isn't he? I mean, really? Like he's the guest that shows up at your house and sticks around like for an unwelcomely long amount of time, if that's even a word.
Sleeps on your couch,
eats your food.
Yeah, puts the uncomfortable dents into your couch. Yeah,
right.
By just staying there the entire time.
Yeah.
So yeah, the voice you just heard is the one of Chris Hussey.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, the Adventures of Young and Holt, a actual play podcast hosted by Fear the Boot, and we were just talking about this before the show. That's got to be one of the oldest running RPG podcast out there with
it's got to be, because I mean, I'm trying to think of ones, at least in that niche, that have been around as long. I mean, that was 2006, so they're coming on 13 years, and there certainly were plenty that came out at that same time, but to think of any ones that have lasted this long, that's a little tough. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they keep going, and through all the things that they've been through, it's still there. The AP feed, with the Young and Holt during on 1 week, and then the Skies of Glass on another week. That's been going on for only maybe 2 years, but it has its listeners, and which is great. Definitely something very grateful for. That's for sure.
You might have to change the name of the show to Old and Holt now.
Yeah, no kidding. Which is, it's funny too, because in the show, Joshua Young of the Young and Holt is actually he has the veteran of the Weird West, so he's already an old person. So that's kind of like I don't know if Brent decided to do that as a bit of a joke, but I don't know, it kind of is. So
those not familiar with the actual play Young and Holt, so what is it? Well, of course it's Deadlands, but any particular arc that we should know about?
No, it doesn't follow any particular story arc or plot point campaign at all. So it's all pretty much homebrewed. I mean, certainly it takes elements from things that absolutely exist within the Deadlands setting. But I didn't use any pre-published adventures or anything like that at all. And so it's all been self-generated, or in certain sense, even generated by the players, directing the plot in certain directions. So, and we've been really happy with it. The story for me, being the GM, it's gone in directions I wasn't necessarily planning, but was very happy to explore. So it is. It's been good. It's been very good, and it's fun to. And I think for me, just as a GM, that's always been kind of my preference. I like to construct the settings, or not the setting, but the adventure and the overall plot and everything on my own. I don't mind sprinkling in certain things here and there, but that's just always kind of been my preference. I got nothing against pre-published adventures, that's for sure, but that's just kind of always where I've gone, or where my heart lies, I guess.
You know your own stuff better than pre-published stuff, so that's how I feel too. So how long have you been playing Savage Worlds, Chris?
I want to say, let's see, boy, if we would pin me down to a year, I want to say probably since, because with the same two guys that are doing Young and Holt, we did a Savage Worlds fantasy campaign back in probably 2009 or 2010. So yeah, it's been I'm probably coming up on about 10 years, which I guess I should be surprised at it, because I don't feel like I've been playing it that long, but yet maybe I have, in one way or another. Yeah, it's setting of choice, no doubt about it.
How do you go 10 years without a character death when I can't make it like 2 sessions without getting my head blown off with a shotgun? Thanks, Matt.
That's a really good question. Maybe that says something. Maybe I'm just a crappy GM in that way. I'm not hard enough on my players. I mean, I like to hurt them, but are they just that good at not getting killed? I'm not sure. The funny thing is, when you talk about the length of time playing Savage Worlds, it's hard for me to. I have to say, the amount of times I've actually been a player with a character, I could probably count them on one hand over that whole stretch of time. I think I've been over any system. This is the one I've used as a GM more than any. I don't get to actually play it very often, because I'm usually showing other people how to play. So I just thought of that. That's kind of weird now that I think about it.
That is weird. That's what I do. I show Eric how to play Savage Worlds.
Yep, that's what happens. No, but I know what you're saying, because, for a lot of systems, usually I start out just straight up to GM, because I can't find anybody else to GM run it for me. But with Savage Worlds, I played one game of Halfrost. That was my first game, and the whole acing of the dice and bennies and all that stuff was so much fun. And then I found myself running it, and I do play it on occasion, but usually, I'm the GM too, and it's not a bad seat to be in, if you ask me. So it's one of the easiest games to run, prep wise, and bookkeeping, all that stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. They talk about the prep, or stats on the spot, that kind of thing. It's really it's a gift to GMs in that way, where you can you could just assign a D6 across the board if need be, and then modify from there. It makes it very easy, and in essence, then as a GM, it makes you look really good, because it makes it look like you were prepared for this particular situation that your players just threw you a curveball at, and it's fantastic like that.
Yeah, you had your guy, and he's got D6 shooting and does 2d6 damage. And nobody knows. So yeah, we'll get to know Chris a little bit better later on the show with what we got planned. But first, I wanted to get to some feedback we got from the last episode.
I was just getting ready to ask if getting to know Chris a little better involves shirts off and mayonnaise, but you just sort of went right into the...
Oh, wait, if we're not doing that, I'm out. That's why I came on here. I was expecting that.
All right.
I mean, granted, I'm a bit more of a Miracle Whip kind of guy, but, whatever. I mayo, hey.
Salad dressing, yeah, why not? Bit sweeter. So we received a mail from Eric Buchanan. He says, I'm excited for more Suede Riffs material. I can't believe Savage Riffs outsold Suede, but that brings me to something that bugs me from the trio of Riffs books. I was underwhelmed by the art. First off, many of the items and characters didn't even have ILOs. On top of that, much of the art was mediocre at best. Wow, that's stiff, like Gary would say. The dog boy looks like someone was using a plastic action figure as a model. One of the things that hooked me originally to Riffs was the gonzo designs of everything. To be fair, I realized that more art with better artists would be expensive, which would need to be passed on to the buyer. That being said, now that Savage Riffs was such a hit, I hope the new books have more eye candy. I'm curious if others were not impressed with the visuals and if there's a market for higher quality Savage Riffs books. What do you think, Gary? You had problems with the artwork in the book?
That's pretty stiff right out of the gate. He came out swinging, old Eric there. I wouldn't say that I did. When I read this, I was kind of taken aback a little bit. I didn't really know what to expect. So I went back and started skimming through the books, and maybe the definition is what he's talking about, but I think it's the style of art. I don't think he's talking about the amount of art, because there is a lot. It might have this sort of like a quick sort of airbrushed sort of an undetailed or unrefined look to all of it, but it's all very well laid out and spaced out throughout the books. And it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's all the same. Do you know what I mean? It's not like you have like one piece done in a certain style. It's it's very consistent. And I wouldn't say it's of poor quality, but I mean, if I had to sit back and judge it compared to like the Mona Lisa or something, it's no, you know what I mean? It's not that, but it's not. I wouldn't call it bad. So I don't know. That's the way I looked at it. There's a lot of it. It's consistent, and it's decent enough. I liked it. I'm no art critic though.
Right. I mean, it's a complaint I've heard. I would say reading it, it's not something that really jumped at me. But then again, I've never read any of the original Riffs books, so I can't really compare the artwork and what they did back then, what they did now. What about you, Chris? Have you read the Riffs books?
I've looked at several Riffs books. I even actually owned a copy of the main original rule book for a brief amount of time. And he certainly is right that those original pieces of art of very stylistic, gonzo, I think is a pretty accurate term, in that the art was very evocative of what the setting was trying to portray. You know, for all the heat that Riff takes for the setting that it is, the artwork is pretty impressive and pretty spectacular. I mean, when I first saw the Glitter Boy, it was like, okay, I want to do that. I want to be that guy. I had no idea what it was. I wanted to be that. So, but not having seen any of the Savage Riffs stuff, and I almost backed that Kickstarter when it came out, even though it's one of those things where I thought about it and I decided no, and I kind of felt bad about it just because as a setting, I don't really have a problem with Riffs. I think that it can be done correctly. You just got to be careful about it. But I also knew there was going to be no way I was going to get any group locally at the time to play that. So I don't have the ability to compare it to what that art looks like in there. But I think it would be very hard to match the evocative nature of the original Riffs art.
I feel like I think that in Eric's situation, it's Mr. Buchanan's situation, it's just a matter of personal preference. He has an art style that he likes, and it's not in the books. And I think that it's just one of those things. Some people like bologna sandwiches, others don't. Yeah, I tried to get Eric to back it, but he thought the $150 would be best spent like removing freckles with laser technology and plucking eyebrows and chemotherapy and other. Eric's not a fan of riffs, so.
But the thing is, I mean, with that amount of money, because like when Suede came out, and I'm looking at all, and I remember looking at all the options, for backing levels, and I ended up backing at that $200 level, and I just thought to myself, I couldn't believe I was spending that amount of money on it. But again, when you talk about bang for your buck, that plus the knowing the amount of use that I was going to get out of all of this, and I had kind of redefined my own personal attitude about what game, my gaming collection I've been paring down over the years. So I'm trying to get to this core group of games that I know I'm always going to love and play, and Savage Worlds is absolutely in that mix. And so knowing that, it was very easy for me to justify spending that amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I mean, I've been playing the game for 10 years, over 10 years, and I'll keep playing it too. So why not? And all the little goodies in that box and the extra book, and next month, hopefully,
yeah,
getting that. All right. Well, before we move on to the rest of the show, we got a little bit of news, and I guess it's all about me, because that's what news should be about. So, well, if you haven't heard, there's something that the Rocky Mountain Savages are putting together. Those guys back in Denver, host of the Savage Cast, and it's a Savage cruise in 2020. So that's at the end of January on to February. And it goes to Jamaica, Grand Cayman Islands, and Mexico. And it's basically a vacation for 1 week and a convention at the same time. So I couldn't pass that up. Signed up for it and going there with my stepson. We're going to bunk together in a cabin and going to play some games. We're going to get drunk. We're going to visit some places. I mean, it sounds like a blast, so I couldn't pass that up, especially since we never know if it's going to happen again next year, 2021. Hopefully it does, but so yeah, I'll have a link to the show notes if you want to join. Right now, there's like over 75 Savages going on to that cruise. We're going to have a conference room to play our games, or, play games whenever. There's going to be Savage Saturday night with prizes, attendance prizes, and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, Shane Hensley's going on there. You've got, who else? Well, Carl Kiesler, the official GM for Pinnacle, is going to run some games there. And a couple of publishers, too, from the Aces. I think there's Cheyenne Wright, the artist from 50 Fathoms and other games, too, is going to be there, confirm his presence. Looking forward to meet a lot of people there. So if you're going on the cruise, just shoot me an email. Curious who else is going to be there. I'm going to meet. So I mean, there's a Facebook group, but a bunch of people are kind of quiet. So just shoot him and push him over. You're in the middle of the Caribbean and he's going to disappear. Sharks will get him. There'll be no evidence. I didn't see anything. It's the reason I'm not going.
We just did the Buccaneer thing with the Chris. These Landauer and Chris Fox are the guys that wrote it, and I just reviewed it, and so I feel like if I went on this cruise, I'd probably just end up overboard. They'd make me walk the plank. I also heard that it was up to 90 people. The Blacks will possibly be there. They're talking about doing some cool things too, Eric, like where you can prepay your tip. What that is going to allow you to do is play games like at other tables, because I think when you get onto the cruise, you have certain table seatings that you have to go to. So when it's dinner time for you or whatever, you have to go to like a set location. But this is I just finished listening to the Savage Cast episode 34, and they were talking about a bunch of stuff. If you want some serious details, less about what Eric's doing and more about what actually is happening on the cruise and who's coming and all that other stuff, then that's the one you want to go listen to. Episode 34 of the Savage Cast podcast. They spent probably 30 minutes talking about it and the stuff that's going on there. But I didn't feel like walking the plank.
I listened to it. Yeah, I listened to it. But you're right. They'd probably
push me over. But there'd be a scuffle.
They'd call you the anchor. Yeah, I don't think you'd float.
That's what I figured. The two of them would try and duke me out, and then before you know it, David Scott would jump out of the closet, and he'd be like, coming at me too. And it'd be a bunch of it. Yeah. Anyways, moving on.
Yeah. So that's a big thing. I mean, if I think you can get a cabin for a room in a cabin for like $565 for the whole week. So I mean, it's pretty cheap. Granted, you have to fly there, and then after that, you have to pay for alcohol. That's pricey, but it's pretty cheap.
What is the cost of all of it for you, if you don't mind me asking?
The flight and the bed is going to be around $800, and after that, I have to pay for the hotel in New Orleans because that's where it sails from. So the night before I'll get there, and then I don't know, man, I'll probably spend another $1,000 just alcohol, souvenir shops and that kind of stuff. But all your food is included in there. So
yeah, this is more like a vacation thing too, because there is 3 stops and this is a 5-day cruise. It's half vacation, half RPG convention, which is kind of cool.
7 days. Yeah. I mean, the first 3 days you're basically, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, you're in the ship, and then there's going to be a bunch of gaming. And then the next 3 days you stop. And then after that, you got Saturday and Sunday, you come back to New Orleans and it's over. So yeah, it's a whole week. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty sweet. I just don't know if I could spend 7 days locked up in a small cabin with you. I'd probably have to get my own room.
Yeah, well, I've already got my own cabin with my stepson, so screw you. You didn't want to come. You wanted to send your daughter to Europe instead. So
Chris, you were saying that you lived up in Alaska. Maybe I'll go that way this year and hang out with a real friend of mine instead of.
Hey, there you go. Yeah, no kidding. Come on up here. We can show the gamers up here how it's actually done.
Well, if you can't make it to the Savage Cruise this year, call on the Cobb October 3rd through 6th. Then you can meet me and Gary, Harrison, and probably Paris. I mean, Paris has been trying to. Nothing's been confirmed yet, but a bunch of us at the Nerds International Network are going to be there again this year for our 3rd appearance. We're going to be running some games. I know there's an official game ran by the convention that Harrison's going to run of Tough Guys, a kind of accessory to Wise Guys. He's going to run that for the convention for Andy, and you can join that game. Yeah, I think he's going to run it twice, so there's got to be a way for you to get a seat in there, and we'd like to meet you. I mean, I was at Queen City Conquest a couple weeks ago. I met Corey and Jen again from last year at Con on the Cobb, and I'm sure they'll be there again. So it's always nice to meet our fans. It's so weird to say that, our fans, but
that guy.
Yeah, that one guy.
I'm sure he'll be there again. That guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's about it for this show. Well, first we're going to open up the books and answer a question from one of our listeners. We mentioned it back, a few episodes back. What about the hindrances from Daniel Irwin about what we think makes a good setting, because he's thinking about going and publishing on SWAG, the Savage Worlds Adventures Guild. So he'd like to know what we think. I mean, if our opinions matter, it shouldn't, but we're still going to answer that question. And after that, with the plug, this was an idea Gary had a couple months back. We're just getting to it now, where he's going to ask me and Chris what our favorite settings are from a few genres. So yeah, we're gonna do that. You guys ready?
I'm always ready.
Do it.
That's why we brought the professional on the show, so that we could answer these serious questions.
When is this professional getting here?
Oh, wait a second.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you very much.
Maybe I heard change is coming.
There's better ways to do things. They get settled here, by us.
Where does that leave me?
It's not all about you. It's about all of us, together.
The future is ours, boys.
Chris probably wondering what the hell's going on.
Eric's not stroking out. He's not having a net.
I figured it was either some sort of biological function, or you're just it's some sort of opening music sting that you just felt like doing yourself.
Eric actually has Tourette's, and so what happens is he's able to contain it for like extended periods of time, but eventually it just has to come out. So he saves it for in between segments, and we use it as the bumper for editing.
Whether or not that story is true, it absolutely needs to be true.
Well, this part of it is true, and the rest not so much. So Daniel Irwin, he asked us, with all these reviews and jump starts, maybe you guys can do an episode on what you think makes a good setting, what to avoid, what to include, that sort of thing. Think it would be helpful to all those wannabe swag / other publishers out there. I mean, I agree. It's a good question. Let's start with our guest. Chris, what do you look for in this setting?
I think the biggest thing I'm looking for is a really compelling concept, something that just really intrigues me. And, I know we're going to get to that a little bit later, but I'll pick on, and I haven't even, I'm going to pick on something that was in the jump starts, or two of them actually. And both of these concepts to me just really, they intrigue me enough that I think that I would actually make a concerted effort to want to play these. Legions of Liberty. So you've got supers, but it's in the Revolutionary War setting. Okay, that just merely that concept itself is enough to make me think, okay, this is an idea I can get behind. It's very Savage Worlds. It's very Savage Worlds. I think that there's a lot of potential for a lot of cool, mysterious things, and I like mysterious / flexible aspects in a lot of my games, and so this for sure would have that, and the mere idea of doing superheroes in a setting that didn't traditionally have superheroes. That to me, that's compelling. And then Sagas and Six Guns is the other one where, to me, that it's this bizarre mashup of Nordic tribal stuff and Wild West. Yeah, I can get behind that. Even taking away the fact that I'm a Deadlands fan, I would still get behind that kind of thing, just because I don't know. I think listening to a lot of Nordic tribal music of late, I don't know if that just kind of geared me up to being open to an idea, but this to me absolutely sounds super compelling, and I think again provides me with enough fodder for a lot of really good ideas. I could totally get into that. So yeah, a unique concept or a familiar concept that sounds fun is what I would say would be the primary driver that you'd have to have.
So I agree with that. That's the main thing, right? That's what sells. That's what draws us into a new setting. What about you, Gary?
Well, the first thing that I look for in a setting is, large-chested, half-naked, beautiful women. If there's none of that, I'm out immediately. No, you're not buying that.
that rules out 99% of the Savage Worlds settings.
Yep, which is the reason I've only played 3 settings. Oh man. In all honesty, I got to tell you the one thing, the major thing for me is I need to be able to look at a setting and think to myself that there's a volume here. There's things that I can get into. There's adventures that I can play inside of this thing, more so than just sort of like a smaller contained sort of linear little kind of a deal. And that's why, like, you take a look at, say, like Deadlands, for example, although it's Wild West, is there are so many like different horror things that you can do. There's so many, from bank robbers to rescue missions to off into the wilderness to find out what's going on, crazy monsters, like, you're almost drawing from an unlimited well. And sort of that's, I guess, if I had to break it down to 2 words, that's what I'm looking for, an unlimited well of adventures. And there's certain settings where I don't think you're going to find that, namely like, well, I would say off the top of my head, like Flash Gordon. When I think of Flash Gordon, I'm sure there is probably an unlimited because I've never read it, but I'm just thinking to myself, most people would just want to play Flash Gordon, and I would just sort of pigeonhole myself into this sort of one idea. Although, again, I haven't read it, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you take a look at 50 Fathoms. It may just be pirates, but you almost have like an unlimited amount of adventures because of all the craziness where you can go down to Torthcaw and fight all these like giant monsters, and then there's like pirate seeking, and then you've got the politics of the place and the overarching story of the sinking world that you're trying to solve. Yeah, things like that's what I'm looking for. Sort of like I'm looking for the size of the well in which I can draw ideas from. And those are usually what it is. Like
you often say, it needs to have legs.
It's got to have legs, yeah. Riffs is another one. Like, it's just what I mean. It's just like with anything can come into the world through these riffs and stuff like that. And just because of that alone, it's like, yeah, it has legs. It has a lot of legs. That's what I look for. I look for legs.
Long legs and big chests, right?
Thanks, pal. That's exactly it.
Well, and the big chest being full of ideas.
Right. Yeah, the idea chest is what he meant.
Or full of magic items, right?
What about you, Eric? What are you looking for in a setting? Because I know, and I got to say, before you even answer this question, you're going to have the most like weirdest answers ever, because you don't like magic items. You're very particular about your games. Items, XP, that kind of stuff is not a thing that you look at. It's more along the lines of the story. Telling the story is what you're looking for in most settings.
Yeah, and I mean, I've made a list in the notes, and you guys basically have just one criteria, and that's it. You're pretty easygoing, and I look at all I've got, and man, I'm picky. I'm so picky, right, Gary? I just realized that. You know that, right?
I know. And the funny thing is you won't even try stuff if you're not even interested. You're like, peace out, suckers. Enjoy your dumb game. I'm going to do this. You're going to eat the caviar while the rest of us are like, we're picking the lint out of the friggin' buffet at the Chinese store. And you're like, Mr. Lamoureux, could we get service?
I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at your list here that you wrote out, which is kind of extensive, really. I do agree with some of these things. I think from a product sampling standpoint, absolutely, some of this stuff should have. But yeah, some of the other stuff, Gary's right. It's a little weird, man.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I mean, Daniel's asking from the perspective of a publisher, at some point. So, and yeah, he asks, so I will answer. So, well, I mean, like you guys, yeah, it has to be an interesting concept. I will say that. I mean, if I'm not into, let's say, steampunk, and there's a steampunk setting, I'm probably going to gloss over it and not spend money. And I mean, it does depend too on how much it costs. You know, I'm more likely to try out a setting that's like $10 for a PDF, but $20, I'll probably think twice about it, even if there's a lot of material in there. And also, yeah, before I even consider spending money on that new setting, I like to have a quick start. And lately they started with the jump starts. That's a good way to get a feel for a setting before actually, spending money on it. Are there pre-gens? So if I want to run a one shot, I can just use a pre-gens and try it out. A one sheet at least for free. Don't charge money for a one sheet. Come on, it's like a sample. It's like you go to a grocery store and that lady's got the cheese on a toothpick for you, and would you like to try that? And you gotta try it, and then if you like it, you'll buy the whole cheese. But if she says, well, it's going to be $1 to try that cheese, no, I will not stand for that nonsense. So, and then, any kind of preview. Can I read a little bit on the Drive-Thru RPG page about your setting? Maybe the first couple pages. That's good to have. A lot of people say they want a plot point campaign in their setting. For me, it's not really all that important. I mean, I think they're cool. I just think that there's so few of them that are actually good plot point campaigns. Most of them are basically just serial adventure modules, and then they call it a plot point campaign. Looking at the first 3 episodes of The Flood. All right. So, yeah, I mean, I don't need a plot point campaign. I like short gazetteers, like in 50 Fathoms or Saga of the Goblin Horde. I tend to agree with Gary that review episode on the Buccaneer. I don't want to have to read half the book, and it's just description, like it's a National Geographic book or something like that with no pictures. I don't need that. I like short, just one paragraph, and there's everything I need to know about that place there, so that if my group, the party, happens to go there, I can just read that real quick and I know what that place is about. I don't have to read 5 pages or 10 pages just on that place. I like that. Setting rules. If you know me, I'm very particular about setting rules. There should be just a few of them. I think if you need more than 6, I mean, that's an oddball number. It could be 5, 6, something like that. If you have more than that, I'm seriously questioning if Savage Worlds is a good setting.
Okay, wait a second. I want to stop you on that one. So when you're talking about what defines setting rules, as far as what do you mean by that? I mean, are we talking, because most of the rules like that are covered. So what additional stuff are we talking about here? I mean, you're just talking not necessarily about like new edges and hindrances. You're talking about what?
Well, about the rules that modify how Savage Worlds work at its core. So if it adds, I don't know, levels of fatigue, or it changes how damage is dealt, like with gritty damage and things like that. If there's more than 5 or 6, that's just too many things I have to keep in mind to try out the game. I mean, if I only played one setting, it wouldn't matter to me how many setting rules there are, because I would get to know that game, and that game would be Savage Worlds to me. But Savage Worlds was originally created how you would you would use a plot point campaign or a setting, 50 fathoms every night, Deadlands, and then you would move on to setting. And I mean, granted, I think it has changed. It's not exactly the same as it used to be over 10 years ago, but that was the idea behind it. And to me, I like to try out a lot of different settings. And if there's just too many differences in the rules, I'll think twice about it. Like we had a review of, well, it wasn't really a review. It was a rant on the Goon that has 19 setting rules. It's, if you need to modify the game that much, is it still Savage Worlds? Or maybe you need a different system for it, because obviously raw, it wasn't enough. I mean, I understand the need for certain changes to make it fit better, but just a few, please, just a few. Don't go crazy about it. Anecdote, funny story. Well, not really funny, but Wise Guys, when I first started designing it, I started to think of all the ways I could modify the game to make it more like I wanted to. And at some point I had over a dozen setting rules, and then I started playtesting it and found out that I wasn't using half of them. So if I'm not using them, why are they there? Is it just some cute design that you thought was clever, but it actually doesn't bring anything to the game? Keep it simple. I like it that way. After that, edges, your design work on the edges. If all you can think about when you create a new edge is to add a +1 or +2 to a bunch of skills, I don't know. To me, that's lazy design. I want edges that allows my character to accomplish things that are otherwise not possible within the framework of the game. Edges are often rules that allow you to break the rules. Take Frenzy or Two Gun Kid. These edges, they basically allow you. They say, okay, usually you can only make one attack. Now you can make two. You can use 2 shooting rolls, 2 shooting dice. So it breaks the rules. That makes it possible for me to do something that isn't normally possible, as opposed to just give me a +2, which anybody can roll that skill anyway. So, and what's a +2 when you can ace your roll? Sure, it's a good boost to have. It makes it almost 100% sure that you'll succeed on what you're doing. But to me, that's not interesting. People need to keep that down to a minimum. Those edges that just gives bonuses. Sometimes you just can't get away from it, and that's all you can think of to do it. But
are you taking notes, Chris?
I'll actually ask for editing privileges to the show notes here that you guys are taking. So keep this reference for later.
Right, more caviar, Mr. Lamoureux.
Yeah, it's not over. I'm so picky.
This is a 5-part list for anybody who's listening right now. Yeah, this is a 5-part series that he'll be doing. So his list is long.
Yes, there's categories and subcategories of categories of subcategories.
You guys are mean. I want clear and interesting archetypes for the characters that people can play in that game. They don't need to have stats for them, but if I'm going to pitch it to my group, I want to tell them, hey, this is what you can play in that game. And because Savage Worlds doesn't usually use classes, I mean, you've got iconic framework and occupational something designed from Mr. Sean Patrick Fannin, Savage Rifts, and what's that other game? Anyway, yeah. So you don't have that usually. So I like to have to see that in a book. Usually it takes just a page or 2, and you got a bunch of archetypes, and this is what you can play.
Freedom Squadron.
Yeah, Freedom Squadron. That's the one. Now something that's very, very particular. I would say, because it's just because I'm on the other side of the screen, the page, and I've been publishing a little bit, but I will look at the credits page and see if there's an editor for this game. What's an editor? Well, there are different kinds of editors. You have some that are basically proofreaders, but some of them are more like technical editors. Now we'll look at your rules, and if it's consistent with the rest of the book, if it's consistent with Suede or Deluxe back in the day, that type of thing. So if you don't have one, and if your name is not Shane Hensley, Clinton Black, or even Richard Wilcock, you should definitely have one, because we've reviewed so many books on this show that definitely could have needed an editor, or if they had one, they sure needed a better one. With Wise Guys, we're in the editing phase right now, and I do have an editor, and he's very good, and he's going through that whole thing and saying, hey, 30 pages back, you said this, now you said that. It doesn't match with the rules that you said before. So now we need to fix that. Or, hey, you just created this edge, but there's already one like that in Suede. Why are you putting that in there? This is the kind of details that will make your work look a lot more professional and make you look like you know what you're talking about. Make the reader feel confident about your book. For me, it's important. I know for a lot of people that aren't really rules kind of people, they overlook that stuff. They don't really care about it, but it nags me. It's a pet peeve of mine.
It's funny because mine was just, show me some boobies. Chris's was more elaborate, but equally as short. You can tell that the two of us eat at the buffet, or we'll just take any slop, but yours is very, very refined, which is fantastic. You can tell which side of the fence you're on.
Three more things. I could have come up with more, but that's fine. If you have a PDF for your setting, please have bookmarks. It's very annoying going through a PDF without bookmarks. Very annoying. Also for PDF, if you have a busy background or something that's really ink heavy, I have an option to disable that background. You can have layers, you can toggle on and off. So if I need to print it, or if I don't like your stupid layout and I don't want to look at it, I can just disable it. And I can actually read the book without being distracted by everything that's around and all the pictures that cover the text a little bit. So
now is this the part of the list where you were like a drink or two into it, and yeah, you can start to feel the sass coming out a little bit.
Yep, and then just a little detail there. If it's a letter size book or a graphic novel, I have 2 columns. It's easier to read it with 2 columns. But if it's a 6x9 like the old Explorers edition for Savage Worlds, I think just a single column works better. I don't know, it reads better. That's just me being extremely picky there, but just a little details like that. I could go on, and please follow the Pinnacle Style Guide, that type of thing. It just makes it more professional.
What are we doing in episode 82? Eric Rants part 2.
Yep. Keep bringing those questions, and I'll keep ranting. That's what I do.
You know what? At least one of us has the ability to answer this question in like superior fine detail. Chris,
that's impressive, man.
Any thoughts on publishing are now out the window?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what. When my first swag product comes out, I'm definitely not sending it to Eric,
right?
Because I want to still have some sort of emotional fortitude left inside me. After he
I'll destroy you.
That's right. Let me tell you the 15 reasons why this adventure sucks.
Hey, on a bright note, you live in Alaska. The alcohol is cheap, and if you wanted to end it, I hear that cold is the way to go. You just sort of kind of go numb and fall asleep.
You absolutely, and the weed is legal here too. So you could get high and go wander off in the wilderness and then just die. And odds are you probably won't be found until the summer. So
yep.
Yeah,
they'll find you as like a frozen popsicle, and whatever it was that you wrote would be like just ash because there was the remnants of what you used to keep warm, and even the tears on your face from Eric's review would still be like frozen there. That would just be like the last like scrawl little bit. It would just be in blood ink on my arm, something like Eric, you ruined me or something.
I would never recover from this.
Actually, it's funny that you say that because though you rant, you make a number of good points about that. And, for one of the things, but hearing that level of brutality in a certain way is actually very good. Early in my writing career like that, I got some extremely harsh notes given to me, and these were stuff that I never would have normally seen. But a guy who was a friend of mine in the line I was writing for, he sent them to me. He's like, "Here, I want you to look at this and read this and really try and learn from it." And at the time, it was extremely difficult to hear, but over time, I began to realize everything that they're saying there was absolutely correct. And rather than let it keep me down and turn me away from it, you take that kind of criticism as learning to do better and thus make better products down the road. So I think that all kidding aside, everything that Eric's saying, there's absolutely lessons to be learned here, because especially when you have the opportunity to do this, I think with Swag, why not? Why not try and do your best effort to put out something really cool that other people are going to enjoy? Take that extra time.
Yeah. So that said, we talked a little bit about this before the show, and Gary just brought it up. You're about to publish something on Swag, right?
I am actually. I'm taking that plunge, and at the time of this recording, it's probably, I'm going to inaccurately guess and say it's about 2 weeks away from publishing. And because it's in...
Double that.
Right now, it's in its last bits of... all the essential layout and everything has been done. I've sent another round of edits back to the guy who's doing the layout, which incidentally is Brent, who plays Joshua Young on Young and Holt. This is what he does for a living, and so he graciously agreed to get corralled into this job. But it's the name of the adventure is, and it's funny because I sometimes always keep having problems remembering the exact title of the adventure, because it's gone through a change, but it was it's called The Wolverines Take the Highway to the Danger Zone, and the easiest way to describe it, the elevator pitch, is it's The Breakfast Club meets Red Dawn. And it's a 1980s movie themed adventure where the characters, and this is a swaydified version of a con event that I've run a few times, but the pre-gens that come with it, you play high school graduates from a variety of social castes within 1980s era high school. And your town has been invaded by the commies, and you must now overcome your own social problems because you've got these different people working together from who would never work together, and you must overcome them while now dealing with this larger threat of trying to get your rescue loved ones in your town, which has been captured by enemy forces. So it's awesome. A little bit of over-the-top 80s action, coupled with some, high school angst, which hopefully will be, mostly player generated.
Nice. That sounds pretty cool. I mean, I'm a big fan of Red Dawn. Well, the original anyway. I'm not sure about the remake.
You sound super enthused about it. I really like that big Red Dawn.
I'm about 3 whiskeys in, so.
I will say that does actually sound really cool, Chris, because I've recently just finished watching The Stranger Things, and it has that vibe to it, and I would really like to, get into a game of that style where, without having any sort of superpowers or major ability to overcome a problem like these kids don't, you still have to figure out how to get the job done, which I really liked that. So
yeah,
cool.
No, I agree. I agree with you. And it's as I was reading it and kind of going through it and taking a more critical eye to it, it definitely hits certain nostalgia points from that era. So I was pretty happy with it. And I've ran it, like I said, it was a con event, so I've ran it for a couple of different times, and it went over pretty well. And the players, even though they may not necessarily have grown up in that era, been a teenager in that era, there was enough stereotypes going on that within the pre-gens and then within just from what they were familiar with, that they were able to kind of latch on to some of that stuff as well. And so, yeah, I'm it's not necessarily, I'm not necessarily releasing it because of that whole, kids on bikes thing that is kind of happening. It just happened to be the easiest one of the 3 projects I've got that I was able to kind of get out the door. That was most complete as far as that goes. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way it looks and the additions and tweaks that were made to it. And the one more thing about the pre-gens, one of the things that kind of defines some of these movies is that all the characters, they all seem to have in the movies, they all seem to have just like a certain cool ability. If you want to pick on like Revenge of the Nerds, for example, I think it was Lewis. He was just like this computer genius, and all he did, it was typical movie stuff. You hear lots of keys clacking, and then all of a sudden, like magic happens on the computer screen. And so there's the ability to do things like that. There's the jock pre-generated character who has certain abilities that he can make happen that a character like that in a movie would be able to do. Same thing with, the prom queen kind of thing. She has certain things that she can just accomplish because a character like that in the movie has that ability to do that other people don't. It's that it's almost supernatural, but not.
Yeah, it's good when you have a scenario like that and an adventure, and you make the pre-gens, because you can make them exactly for that adventure where they have their 15 minutes of fame, their place to shine, which you can't really do when players make their own characters because they don't know what's coming. But for something like that, it works. So yeah. We'll give it a plug probably. Well, if you say 2 weeks, probably next episode it'll be out, so we can plug it then.
Why don't you send that thing over here and let us do a little bit of a review on it? That's what I'm saying.
I will absolutely do that when I get the next incarnation. I'll absolutely do that.
Eric we'll put Eric on top of the review process for that one.
I'm sweating already.
Me too, and I didn't write it.
All right, so yeah, we got to know Chris a little bit better, and we're going to get to know him even better now because Gary's going to lead this one. Our favorite settings from a few genres. The plug.
Hey, it's the podcast log.
So let's get started. We've chosen 5, so we'll just keep it nice and simple. I want to know what your favorite setting is in this genre of game, and at least 2 to 3 reasons why it's your favorite setting, just so that we don't get no stinking one note answers, Eric. All right. Starting with Chris. Let's do this.
Has to be within Savage Worlds, correct?
Yeah. So we're going to I'm going to start with Eric on this one, because that's going to give you a little bit of time to think of some of your favorite fantasy settings, and that's the first one, fantasy. All right, Lamoureux, what do you got for me?
Well, I'm really excited about. Just kidding. Well, people can't see this, but behind me on the shelf there's a nice big box that this man right here, the man, Gary, got me for my birthday a couple years back. And it's a box for Lankhmar. So I read the stories when I was a teenager, and I read them again a couple of years ago. That setting, I mean, urban fantasy, thieves in this city, this huge city, corrupt, dirty. There's something dark about it. So much fun. I mean, if you've read the books, when you read this, you're like, oh man, that's exactly how a D&D session goes. That's exactly how players talk while their characters talk to each other, what they want to do and all that. I mean, you've got thieves that they don't care about saving the world. They just want to make money, and they have girlfriends, and they get in trouble with thieves guilds. There's deities and cults in there, sorcery. I mean, this really speaks to me because I prefer low fantasy, sword and sorcery settings when it comes to fantasy. I mean, I like the high fantasy just like the next guy, but after 35 years of playing D&D on and off and these kind of games, you kind of get jaded a little bit. And I find Lankhmar's more interesting. Plus that big box there, that box set, I mean, you get the map, a double-sided map, one of the city. On the other side, it's the whole continent. You got a screen, and it comes with an Adventures, Eyes of Garmush. It's like a mini plot point campaign in there for adventures that are tied together, but you don't have to run them in sequence, so you can actually run your own stuff in between. It's not in the box, but as a PDF, those archetypes, and you can level them up just like Richard Wolcott did. You get 3 books, and I got the expansion on the Savage Seas. Man, they're beautiful too. The trade dress in those books, ooh,
now
top notch. Like
are the PDFs bookmarked?
Yes, they are.
So
and the layers too.
After you read these things, do you go out and like dress up in all black and take a couple of, maybe fishing knives or something like that for filleting and whatnot, and just run around your neighbors' houses and like steal their barbecues and stuff at night? Like, do you do thiefy stuff in the wee hours of the morning?
I leave dark poetry behind too.
No, what is your call sign? Because you have to sign it like the Black Hawk or something like that. The Night Raven. The Ohio Chicken.
The Dark Chuckler.
What? Oh my God! What do you put like a big red nose on and a huge afro and go around in your big 12-inch Ronald McDonald's flip flops? Oh, hey everybody! I stole your barbecue, Dark Chuckler.
Well, the chuckle is what they hear, once I disappeared in the shadows.
Oh, okay. It's not the wheel of the rusty barbecue as you drag it away, going heat, heat, heat.
No. I mean, it's just a contrast between the dark poetry and then like a chuckle. Yeah, and I figured honorable mention Hal Frost, just because there's so much material for it.
All right, Chris, you're up.
Yeah, I mean,
never mind, Eric. Put a sock in it. Shut up.
This may be considered a cheat, because I have not tried. Although I guess because I own Buccaneer, and I would consider that to be fantasy, even though it's pirates. But I have not read enough of it to make me determine whether or not I like it or not. And I have not read a review, although I have an idea of what the tone of the review might be. But I want to cheat here, and I'm going to say my own Savage Worlds fantasy homebrew system or setting that I developed. I like it because I was able to take the way, and this was and I converted it over because it was originally a D&D 3.5 setting, and when I converted it to Savage Worlds, I found that I was far more happy with how the game and the world felt to me at that point. I felt like it was less constricted by the rules of 3.5. I like how I was able to manipulate the fantasy races to kind of fit what my world, what I wanted my world to be, or what it was. And it just also, because of the way the game, because of the way Savage Worlds works, it fit the bit more heroic type of flavor I really wanted with the world when I developed it. So I know that's a cheat, but it's a homebrew fantasy setting that I've gotten some good mileage out of and want to actually continue to get mileage out of as I move around and now get to experience new groups.
Okay, next up, sci-fi, buddy. What do you got? What is your sci-fi settings? Now, inside Savage Worlds, there is, especially as of late, there is like 10, 15 different sci-fi settings? 7 worlds? What else we got? Come on, lay it on me. Last Parsec, Slipstream, Interface Zero, Nemesis. Nemesis I played with Steve. That was pretty good. Fear Agent, Flash Gordon. And what did you choose? Out of all of those awesome settings I just named, which one did you pick?
Well, I feel a bit like Chris where I cheated a little bit. It's Daring Tales of the Space Lane. So it isn't exactly a setting per se. It's a series of adventures that come with a free booklet, a couple pages long for the rules that you need to play in that setting. And Daring Tales of the Space Lane, well, that's published by Triple Ace Games. Mr. Wiggy himself, a very good Savage Worlds designer. Granted, it's for 2 editions back. It still works quite well. If you're looking to nail the space pulp / Star Wars kind of feel to your Savage Worlds, to your sci-fi, Daring Tales of the Space Lane, I mean, the encounters are so well built, so fun together. He's got figure flats for this. He's got paper terrain for that. Granted, like I said, it's a series of adventures, and they're made for 4 pre-gen characters that their whole advancement path has been already determined so that you can toggle layers on your PDF and level them up as needed. But a smart GM can actually just have the players make their own characters, and it wouldn't be a problem. I've run that Daring Tales a couple times, and it's a blast, man. They're just so much fun. It just feels like Savage Star Wars with the serials number filed off. Great stuff. It's really worth it.
Wow, that's I didn't see that coming. I actually just looked it up to see. I should log in to see if I own some of this stuff. At some point, I might have got it through one of the what do you call those bundles of holdings, right? But they're on sale right now in the drive-thru. I'm gonna have to take a peek at this a little bit later on. Special nod goes to
Necropolis 2350. That's an old one too. I think at some point it was supposed to be a Weird Wars in space, but Wiggy started his own company with a friend, so they had to change it a little bit. It's a lot like Warhammer 40K, but you don't play characters that are like giants in big power armor and stuff like that. You play, it's basically the Inquisition in space, because the aliens are undead creatures. So the vampires are the leaders, the mummies are the priests for that race of aliens, the Rephaim, and then all kinds of undead, just as the fodders, the soldiers are zombies, and any bullet does half damage to them. They're really tough. It is a very military campaign type of thing, but they do have a couple PDF supplements that give you ideas how to run a purely like Inquisition with a lot more role play. There's an adventure where you're followed by a crew of reporters with cameras as you have to rescue people. I ran that a couple times too, and it's really cool.
Chris, what do you got for us? Sci-fi.
I've got sci-fi. This was a fan-made, savaged version of an existing game. So this is because all the ones that you listed, the vast majority of them I haven't even heard of. So I'm definitely going to have to go and do some looking. But there was a fan-made version of Savage Mech Warrior, which is the role-playing aspect of the BattleTech universe. Me being the big BattleTech junkie that I am, I've never I even helped contribute to the third edition of the Mech Warrior rule system. And for modern audiences, it's far too detailed and a bit cumbersome for most people to try and digest and play. And so I found an online version. Somebody had essentially converted Mech Warrior over to Savage Worlds. And the nice thing about this is that it worked. And it worked in such a way that you could be doing all your and everything outside of the mech cockpit. When you needed to jump into your battle mech and go out on the field and do it, and then have the BattleTech rules, the actual tabletop rules go, you could do that. And he had just developed a very simple rule that made sense and allowed you to have the skills that you needed in Savage Worlds and then have it work in the actual BattleTech setting. So, and even though BattleTech Mech Warrior tries to be a bit more hard sci-fi in the sense it's much less space opera and tries to be based in a little bit more science, there's still absolutely an action excitement element that the game does possess and wants to try and portray. And Savage Worlds, much like you said with Salt and Pepper, it works for that. There's nothing supernatural, there's nothing magical in the game at all. It's just straight up people shooting at people and doing that stuff. And it totally worked for that. If I had to do an honorable mention or pick a second one, this is a system I would like to see a Savage setting for, and it's the old Masters of Orion 2 video game from back. I really, did you play that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about only because one of my longtime role-playing game friends, Mike Gibbons, he's from Michigan. And anyways, he talked about it all the time. And he was always playing that game. And this is even 10 years ago. Masters of Orion was just nonstop. I never played it, but he talked about it so much. As soon as you mentioned it, it's like, oh.
Yeah, and I never played the original Masters of Orion, so I got my meth on that was Masters of Orion 2, and it's a space building game. You've got your planet, you got to build your colony ships, you got to go colonize planets, you got to develop technologies and build your empire, and then have diplomatic relations with all these other empires that you begin to encounter as you expand in the universe, and eventually, you try and take them over. But I always wanted to develop a setting or a system to take that universe at a time when you've got these 5 or 6 interstellar empires and you go on these adventures and you go and do this stuff. And I would love to see a Savage setting for that game.
Yeah, I like your picks way better than Eric's junk. I could tell you that much. Back to you, Lamoureux. Let's do this. Horror. What do you got?
That was a tough one, but I think Achtung, Cthulhu for me. Man, just the depth of information that you find in these books about the era from pop culture, from what people were eating, how they dressed. There's just a wealth of information in there. I mean, it's a lot like Weird War II, right? But you add Lovecraft creatures, mythos creatures in there. It just gives it a spin. They've got all these really mean bad guys that look like it reminds me a little bit of in Hellboy, that kind of clockwork guy with the blades and that kind of stuff. I mean, we played it. I played it a couple times. Even on the show, we played it. And these books are just gorgeous. 2 books. They're dual statted, of course, because you can play Call of Cthulhu or Savage Worlds with them. But that one really hits the spot for me. And then Honorable Mention. little bit different horror there because it's more action horror, but rippers. We played a short campaign with you guys, and I played it before too. That's more like Van Helsing type of horror, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, the characters you can play in there, and how it always goes back to monsters in literature. That's just plain genius, and the books are gorgeous too. So, Chris, do you have a favorite horror?
To the shock of no one, it's going to be Deadlands, and I would probably throw in Hell on Earth and the whole Deadlands
noir.
Well, we never, yeah. I never did Lost Colony, but yeah, Deadlands, Hell on Earth, and then now Deadlands Noir. And Gary, let me tell you something. I 100% agree with you in what you said about horror being a genre to do. And because I was in the exact same boat. I had a hard time wrapping my head around the idea of being scared, trying to scare people, all of that kind of stuff. And I realized when I started playing Deadlands this time around, when it came for the podcast, I realized that all the other times I had played Deadlands before this, I essentially played it, wrong in the way that I approached it, both as a player and as a GM. And doing it this time around, my approach to the game is completely different. And though, yes, I'm not. I don't believe that either of my players are actually scared. The way everything is presented in the game by me and how they have their characters interact with certain things, it feels like it's got a creepier edge to it. And so, like, even though I haven't been able to play Hell on Earth since the late 90s, I desperately want to play that game again because I want to be able to take that same approach and put it in that post-apocalyptic setting. Because I don't know if it's because my skills have improved as a GM, or if I just have a better understanding of what the game is really trying to accomplish. But yeah, Deadlands, those three incarnations, absolutely, that's where I'm all at, and I'm super excited for Dark Ages because I think that you can take movies like The Witch and use that kind of stuff as just real inspiration for how to run that kind of game.
I was really looking forward to Dark Ages. It's going to be so awesome.
Moving on to modern, back to you, Eric. I'm not actually surprised that you've mentioned this one. To tell you the truth, I think this one is right up your alley.
Yeah, Tropicana. I mean, that's from Grammel, and it's basically the A-Team, Magnum PI. It's like 80s, but it's in South America where there's all these criminals, organized crime, those cartel people, and then there's an element of supernatural with an ancient civilization living in the jungle. So yeah, you work for it's like a company, a troubleshooting company, and they do all kinds of things, escorting rich people, exploring the jungle and stealing treasure, tomb robbing, that kind of thing. And I mean, the artwork, it just sells it, especially the cover. It looks like Grand Theft Auto, basically. And it's a lot like that. And all the options you get for edges, what your character can do, the archetypes you can play. You build your own company that gives you certain bonuses. So it's a little bit like headquarters for Rippers, the lodge thing. So, I mean, there's a lot of good ones for modern. Some of them are kind of out of print now, and Streets of Bedlam is pretty good too. But Tropicana was just a lot of fun for me. And honorable mention, well, East Texas University. I mean, it's just genius. It's just a bunch of college kids trying to solve supernatural mysteries going on around campus with the whole East Texas culture there. They say write what you know, and Preston and Ed Wetterman, they just nailed it. This is when Chris was talking about the perfect pitch, the perfect concept. I mean, this has to rank up there. I think it's one of the last best concept to come out for Savage Worlds. Personally, coming from Canada, not being all that familiar with the school system over there and the culture in the States, the university and all that, I kind of struggled running it, but maybe at some point I'll get back to it and give it another shot. Because I mean, Gary was just talking about it. He played in the whole campaign, and probably one of his best campaigns. So his character was awesome. It's just really good setting.
Mm-hmm. I would have flipped the script on those two, and I would have put ETU first, and then possibly Tropicana, and then last but not least, we got Supers, Eric. Now, Supers in Savage Worlds. This is kind of the one setting that I don't really know that there's a lot of material to pick from at all out of this. We've got the new one coming out, Legions of Liberty, Superheroes of 1776, and you've got down what?
Well, yeah, and you've got Necessary Evil, of course, the big classic, and the sequel with Breakout. You got Titan Effect that could be considered Supers. Here's the thing. I'm not a big fan of Supers. If I were to run a campaign for Supers, I would pick something more like what I reviewed, Extreme Earth, because it's Iron Age. It's more Batman instead of the Avengers. The whole capes and tights things just doesn't do it for me. But Extreme Earth, dystopian future, I could get behind that. And I read it. I could have said Titan Effect too, but I haven't read the whole thing yet. But I keep hearing a lot of good things about it. And I read the demo years ago. It was really good. So that could be my honorable mention there. But no, Supers, not really my thing.
Since when are you not into tights and wearing a cape?
Since I was 5 and I was Superman for Halloween.
Wow. You slip one guy a roofie at the Con on the Cob and he gets all like, I'm never putting capes and tights on again.
Awkward. What about you, Chris? Are you into Supers?
No, I've never really done Supers. Certainly not in Savage Worlds, and I maybe did it a little bit way back in probably the late 80s with Marvel and the face rip and all that, but that was barely touched it. So I am looking forward, like I said, Legions of Liberty. That to me looks like a setting that is pretty cool, but beyond that, yeah, nothing. I got nothing on this one at all.
All right, well, that's going to wrap up the plug, man. There's some fantasy greats, some sci-fi greats, we've got the professionals here to talk about them. So no pros here. You guys both laughed. We're not pros. Shut up.
Not even close.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Let's do it.
All right, well, Chris.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on the show, man. Last minute, but we managed to get you on.
Yeah,
I don't regret it.
No, this was good. I'm glad I had some plans, but they essentially got rained out. So yeah, this worked out. Great.
All right, so if people want to listen to your actual play, The Adventures of Young and Holt,
it's very easy. youngandholt.com. It will take you directly to that portion of the feed. And you can now, if you do subscribe to the podcast feed, you're going to get the Skies of Glass AP in there, and that's a fine show. It's an interesting setting in its own right. It's not Savage Worlds, but so youngandholt.com. You can find me. Right now, the show actually is on hiatus But there's 34 episodes to go and enjoy of that show. You can find me at the Hussman, all one word, on Twitter. And there we go.
All right, let's get you guys some contact info. We're running a little bit late here. If you want to get in touch with us, just write us at thewildeye@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, Mew, YouTube, everywhere. Twitter too, The Wild Eye. And if you want to talk to us, find us on Mew or MeWe. We're on there, Nerds International. We're not shy. And finally, if you want to support the show, make sure it keeps going and that we can afford these expensive guests like Chris on the show. Support us on Patreon. I'm just kidding.
I'm a pretty cheap guest. Yeah.
He's just kidding. You're not getting paid.
We tricked you. That's such a dick move.
Sorry.
But just the face, Gary's face while I was doing that, I'm like, he's like freaked out by what I'm doing. So with Patreon, we get to buy the books that we review every month for you guys. We pay the rent for the hosting, and we pay the whiskey for the show. So thank you.
Wait, what? Whiskey money? I wasn't aware of this perk.
That's my drinking money.
Oh, you're drinking money.
Yeah. And also by being a patron at a certain level, you get to hear your name sang by the one and only Gary here with the sexy romance song with the Patreon jingle coming right up.
All right. This is a special Patreon jingle dedicated to our guest Chris Hussey and his favorite setting, Deadlands. Daniel Brown, can you give me a hand buckling up these assless chaps? Sean Richer, Perry Chalmer, and Alan Bray would say we hog-tie this little piggy and get the whip out. Conrad Erasmus Neubert and Greg Bruni, saddle up, boys. We're going for a long ride in a deep canyon. Corey Judd, Ray Asteria, and Rob Towle, you guys give new meaning to the word cowpoke. Poke, poke. Bubbles, shaving a haircut, 2 bits. Saddle sore massage, 3. Manuel Sams, me and you under the starlight by the campfire, I'll bring the hot poker. Matt Stock, pure mongrel, come and help me pitch a tent. Sorry, too late. Boing. Stephen Dragonspawn and Daryl Cartier, put on these Velcro gloves and help me wrangle up these sheep. Zovia RPG maps, let me spread my seed all over your fertile farmland of love. Naked. Frank Turfler Jr., let's head into the forest and create our own personal totem pole. Hey, how are ya? Gil Dashard, Louis Strad, and Jean Schronheim, your special saddles with horns in the middle are ready for pickup. Oh my. John Peterson, Carl Kiesler, who wants to tickle my trigger of my tiny gun? It's a 6-shooter. Digital Dungeon Master, Super Dave, I got a special trail mix for you right here in my sleeping bag. It's got extra nuts. Mr. Stag, Remy Bideau, I can't seem to cock my gun. Maybe it needs a little lube. Kevin Stanley, Jan Yetma, should we play a little game of cowboys and NTUs? Oh yeah. Michael Morrison and Mao Guan No Mawu, You want to find out why they call me the Pony Express? In bed. And lastly, to our newest Patreon, Uncle J Raz. How'd you like to get naked and ride me side saddle with spurs?
Yeehaw! Step on up, piggy! I got your pork chop! Sweet! Give me a little pork chop, pork chop, pork chop!
So, Chris, yeah, good luck with your upcoming release for Swag, that adventure. We're going to check it out. And like Gary said, probably a review. I'll try to be nice.
You can try and you can fail to be nice. That's all right. I'm okay with this. I've already come to terms with how harsh this may be.
I'm used to failing, but no, it will be all right. So yeah, this is Eric saying, my dogs can't stop barking.
Chris, this is where you come in. This is Chris saying, what are you saying? What do you got?
You know what? I'm going to say my dog has actually behaved herself quite well during this entire time, which is pretty impressive, but it may also be because she's on several drugs at the moment.
Fantastic. All right. This is Gary saying, keep your pants on, keep it fun. Thanks, everybody. We are out.
Wild Eye Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of the respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Eye Podcast.